LP has the largest stock of drum heads in the world. This is just a small sampling of all the different drum heads we currently stock. Bongo heads, conga heads, bata heads, cuica heads, flat heads, flat skins for those of you that would like to do your own mounting. We're going to learn about that today, how to mount your own skins, how to tune your drums, how to do some general care. If you have an old drum and you want to fix it up, you can do that. We have the parts. We have everything that you need to do it yourself. And today we're going to explain to you just how to do that. What you're looking at is a well-used LP conga drum. It's been played a lot. The head's been tightened a lot. It's time for a new drum head on this drum. How can you tell if you need a new drum head? Well, one telltale sign is you can't tune the drum any higher. As you can see from these lugs, they're tuned up as far as they could go. Another sure sign is the height of this head has increased. From the top of the rim up, it's over 1.25 inches. It's almost 1.5 inches. A new head would be about 5/8 to 3/4 of an inch above the rim. You can see the height of this drum head as opposed to the one that's on here. So what's your choices? Your choices are you can purchase a pre-mounted head, or you can do it yourself and mount your own head. Let's talk a little bit about the components that go into a drum head. Here's a pre-mounted LP drum head. It consists of the skin and a flesh hoop. Okay, the skin wire is actually embedded in the rawhide. Now the way this happens is the skin has to be wet, and we'll usually have to soak these skins. Conga skins are basically a thick skin, depending on the size of the drum. The bigger the drum, the thicker the skin. I'd like to show you a couple different skins and their uses. Skin like this would be for a conga drum or a large side of a bata drum. It's a thick skin. You would have to soak a skin like this probably close to 8 hours in warm water before you'd be able to, it would be flexible enough for you to mount it. Now as you get smaller in drums, such as the smaller congas, the bongo drums, cuica drums, the heads become thinner. Here's a bongo head. Probably in about 2 or 3 hours in warm water, this would be ready to mount. Now the best idea is if you have a small head like this, you might be able to soak it in a bucket of water. If you have a larger head like this, you might actually have to do it in your bathtub. We use a mortar tub. You don't want the skins, very important, you don't want the skins to soak too long because they'll actually deteriorate. They'll take on too much water, they'll deteriorate, and they won't be as strong. Once you remove your old drum head, you'll have to soak it in water. You have to loosen this up. What we want to retrieve is the flesh hoop that's enclosed right here. Soak it in water. When the skin becomes loose enough, you can pull this section away. You might actually have to cut it at that point. Pull it away, get your flesh hoop out. Now I would like to stress the importance, make sure that your flesh hoop is perfectly round. And the way you can do that, I show here a traditional rim. You place the flesh hoop in the traditional rim. It should be even all around. The flesh hoop should be slightly larger than the counter hoop. And the reason for that is we don't want it to shift, we don't want it to pop out. You'll probably encounter a lot less problems with the comfort curve rim because of the way that it actually holds. Let me show you that. On this, the flesh hoop actually sits inside of it. Now we're going to show you how to mount both traditional and comfort curve rims today. My favorite would be the comfort curve because you don't have the rivets. When you're cutting the rim, your hand is going to be going along the rim. And when you come to these V brackets, you kind of have to skip over them. It's not hard, but it seems to be a lot easier with the comfort curve rim in the cutting. And what we're going to do now is we're going to take a couple skins out of the water. We're going to take a conga drum. We're going to show you how to mount your own conga head. Here we have our skins in warm water. I'm going to take one out. We're going to mount an 11 3/4 inch conga. Every conga skin has a smooth side and a rough side. All the LP heads that you would get would be silk screened on the smooth side. But in case you have a skin that doesn't have a silk screen on it, you can tell by running your hand from one side to the other. You'll feel one is a rough texture, one's smooth. The smooth side is the side we want to be playing with. We want our hands to hit. We got smooth side up, and what we'll do now is we'll take our flesh hoop and we'll center it. We have our flesh hoop centered on the skin. And now here's what you might feel would be a tricky part. You'll put the rim on top. The flesh hoop's inside of the rim. Now what we're doing is we're pulling the head over the flesh hoop, but inside of the rim. Now you could kind of keep your elbow. I usually keep my elbow on the back, and I kind of work it around like this. And don't get upset if it kind of pops out on you. You'll get used to it. Going around the whole skin. And what we have here is pretty much a sandwich. Now I'm going to pick up the skin like that. That's what it should look like from both sides. Okay, what we're going to do now, we're going to center this on the drum, put it on the drum. We want to make sure that we have the brackets right underneath the side plates. You want to center it that way. You're going to have a little bit of slack in the head. You're going to have to carefully let up on the head because you want to press it down enough to attach the lugs. Before we attach the lugs, I'd like to go over a couple things. Whether you're rejuvenating an old drum or mounting a new drum, every drum comes with lug lube. Use it. Definitely use it. It's going to extend the life of these threads. There's an awful lot of tension that's going to be pulled down on this head. You're going to be banging on it. You're going to be tensioning it. You're going to be detuning it when you're done. You want these threads to stay nice. You should also inspect all your threads if you're using an older drum. You want this nut to run freely up and down. It should run all the way up the threads, all the way back down. That's how you'll be able to tune it easy. It'll tune evenly. So before we mount the head, we want everything backed out, all the super nuts backed out as far as they can. The reason for that is we need as much room as possible because we're trying to press down on this head. Once you get one clipped, and once again be very careful, you want to be very careful that all your hard work on the table there doesn't slip right out. So keep a hand on the opposite side. Then we'll turn the drum around. Pressing down. Here's where it's nice to have a friend helping you with this. Okay, we got the two hardest ones done. And we go around the whole drum and do the same thing. As you do this, you'll see we have some wrinkles, which are actually folds of skin. These you'll want to come out. I need that needle nose pliers. You'll want to pull up on this, eliminate any of these wrinkles. It'll make it a lot easier to do your tensioning. We're just pulling out these wrinkles. The head's sitting directly on top of the flesh hoop, so any wrinkle is not going to let the rim seat properly. I have another one over here. Okay, we've gotten all the lugs in place. And now what we're doing is making sure that we have everything centered. The first thing you can do is run your fingers around the drum, like that. You want to make sure that there's space all around. You don't want the head shifted to one side. It'll be uneven. I'm feeling this one right now, and it feels even all the way around. The second thing we're concerned with is the height. We want it low enough that we're not going to hit our hands on the rim, but we don't want it too low that we don't have more room to tension it as time goes on. As long as you have them all pretty much equal, you'll be in good shape. You'd usually want a ½ inch above the rim, a ½ inch to 5/8 above the rim. So you can put a tape right on there or a ruler, measure from here to your bearing edge. Another important thing too when you're ordering a drum head, drum heads are measured from bearing edge to bearing edge. If you have a rim, don't call our customer service and give them a rim measurement. You want to give them the bearing edge of your drum. That's the most important thing. If you have the skin wire, you can mount any drum. A trick that I use to make sure that I have the drum tensioned properly is make sure that you can see the lug just popping through the nut. We'll show you right here. To go down a little bit farther. You can just see the lug popping through the super nut here. These are all precision made. They're all going to be exactly the same size. So if you go around your whole drum and find this, it'll be perfectly centered. Now we're ready to cut the drum head. This is the most important part of mounting. You want to cut it low enough where you're not going to hit your hand on it, but not too low that the flesh hoop is going to slip out of it. Very important, get an industrial single-edge razor blade. Don't open up your shaver and take out a double-edged blade. And please be careful with any kind of sharp instrument like this. Okay, I have my finger as a guide on the rim. I'm making my initial cut in the head. The idea of this is you shouldn't be sawing. It shouldn't be a hard thing for you to do. You're actually pulling the head into the blade. Always try to work with the drum away from your body. This way you can see where the blade is coming through. I'm at an ever so slight angle downwards because I don't want the skin to protrude above the rim. You don't want to go too extreme with your angle, just slightly. You can see I got my guide finger here. There's no way, even if I close my eyes, that I'm going to cut this part of the head. I'm turning the drum now, so I'm always working so I can watch. If you find yourself really pushing, you're doing something wrong. It should really glide through the skin. Take your time as you come to the end because you don't want to slip when the skin lets go. There we have it. This will become a great dog bone. Tie it up. How long does the skin have to dry? It all depends on how humid it is where you mounted it. It could dry overnight, but it could take up to 4 days. You might be able to hit the drum and it might have a sound, but it's really not dry. The outside is going to dry before the inside. Keep in mind this is a flat surface, but in here, around the flesh hoop, the skin is bunched up. There's water that lays in there. That's got to dry really good. One way to test it is, if you can move this at all, the excess skin, it's not dry. Now, if you use a pre-mounted head, sometimes because of the humidity and because it's a natural product, it might shrink a little bit. you might have a little bit of problem seating it properly on the top of the drum. Now what you're going to do to alleviate that, turn the drum head over, fill it with warm water to, I'd say fill it with about 1 inch of warm water. What we're really trying to do is we're trying to soften up the sides. I'd say 2 hours, maybe 3 hours. If you feel that you can move it and it's somewhat flexible, turn it over, put it on the drum. You want this part of the head to sit right on the bearing edge. That's where your sound's coming from. The seal on the bearing edge is the most important. After you mount it, let it dry good. Don't tighten it down. It might take 2 days to dry. If you're in a real humid climate, let it dry longer. And never tension a drum head that's wet. You can speed up the drying process with forced warm air. Never use anything hot, especially a concentration of heat or any kind of high heat in any one particular area. Just use a warm, forced air heat. As far as bongos, it's not much different than congas. The skin is thinner, so you'll probably have an easier time of it. However, just be careful, once again, as you're cutting, because there's not quite as much room in a bongo as there is in a conga. The conga has a more timpani-style head, rim, that comes away from the shell a little bit more. So just be very careful as you cut the excess skin off. Once again, keep the blade on an angle, take your time, come all the way around. This is our cuica mounting expert, Jim Pastorino. He's going to demonstrate a little bit different technique that we use for mounting cuicas. Cuica is a drum that's played with the stick running through the head. The stick actually becomes part of the head after it dries. And what we have here, we have the cuica stick. It's a two-piece stick. It's a separate ball and a bamboo stick. Now if you're in a pinch and the stick happens to come out, you can fix it yourself, at least temporarily, with crazy glue. Jim? Now he's got a calf skin there. It's a very thin head. It's thin so you get the response. And what he's doing is he's cutting it in 4/4. He's folding it in 4/4 rather. He's trying to find the center of the head. That's where you want the stick to go through, in the exact center. Now you insert the stick, and then what we're going to do is we're going to tie that stick inside of the head. The reason we tie it is so that the skin actually goes around that ball on the end of the stick. If you want to hold that, Jim,
oh, thanks.
You can get that string going. Usually a heavy-duty nylon, almost like a fishing line, is what we use. Very strong. Jim has stopped working out since he began doing cuica heads. He gets all his exercise doing this. You want it to be very tight because you're pulling down. The principle of the cuica is you're pulling down on that stick. You want the head to totally encapsulate the ball on the end of the stick. That looks good. Okay. Very good. Now this excess string you cut off at the end. Now show them what we have here and you can put it right on the drum. Okay. Now we're going to lay the skin out flat again because we have to use the same procedures we used for conga drum mounting. Lay it right out and we'll put it on the drum then. You've got to put the skin wire in it.
Okay.
Okay.
Incidentally, these cuica skins is a very thin skin. It's almost like a paper-thin skin. From the time you put that in the water, you'll be ready to work with this in about 20 minutes. It's not like the conga heads where it was in for 4 to 6 hours. These take on water very rapidly. What Jim's doing now is he's stretching the head because we encapsulated that wooden ball, there's wrinkles naturally because it's a round head. So he's taking out as many wrinkles as he can before putting it on the drum. Now he's got the skin wire, the flesh hoop, And he's going to use the same technique we use for the congas. He's got to slip the skin over the flesh hoop and under the counter hoop.
What's that box for?
We're using this box to keep the stick and ball centered in the middle. Obviously, you would want, in your finished cuica, the stick and ball to be in the center of the head. You'll get the best response when you start pulling it. So that's what we're using the box for, just to keep it centered in the rim assembly. Okay. Here we're installing the cuica tuning screws, and like the conga, you'll see how the rim tips when we're putting it on. You want to make sure you don't lose that flesh hoop as you're doing these maneuvers here. Let me give you a hand, I'll just hold that down. Okay, now a cuica, the rim is pretty much flush with the finished head. So what Jim's going to do now, he's making sure he has most of the wrinkles out, and then he's going to bring down the rim just about to the level of the head. Okay. You can see the cuica has 4 lugs. He's going cross. The reason for that is he wants to keep the rim coming down straight. He doesn't want to go around the drum and have it looping around. And you never want to tighten down too much on any one lug. You'd also always like to do it a little bit at a time. It makes the transition come down smoother. If you tighten down on one, you might actually start bending the rim. Good. Once again, we're using a sharp single edge razor blade. And once again, please be careful using this. Now he's slicing downward so he has something to grab. This is a much thinner skin. It kind of slips out of your hands. Now because the rim is at the same level of the head, he's able to ride the rim going around the drum. It's not the same kind of thing as a conga drum where you had to use a guide finger. And once again, he's not using a sawing motion. That blade is just touching the head. He's actually pulling the head into the blade. You're pretty good at this, Jim. There you have it. These drums also would dry very fast because it is a thin head. I'd still let it sit overnight because you do have the fold of skin underneath there. Always be sure that the flesh hoop is even around the bearing edge of the drum and that it's inserted evenly into the counter hoop, as you can see here. You don't want to push too much to one side. You want your tuning lugs to all be doing the same thing, coming down at the same angle. And this holds true for congas, bongos, cuicas, any drum. One final reminder, now that you've mounted your new drum head, you'd like it to last as long as possible, obviously. After a session, we recommend that you'd back off on these lugs, detune the drum, loosen the head a little bit. That will greatly prolong the life of the head. You got to think about it. When you're playing, and you're playing hard, you get to take a break afterwards. But if you torque up this drum, you're putting it in your road case, and you're putting it in the back of your van, and the tension is always on it. There's always a lot of stress here. That's why these drums are built like this. But if you want to prolong the life of your head, loosen it up and tune it up. The head will last a lot longer. Your lugs and all your rims will last a lot longer. And always use lug lube. Another point to remember is when you're tuning your drum, we've seen a lot of drums where somebody tunes up on one lug more than all of the rest. Maybe it's a lug that's closest to them as they're playing, but when you do that, you're putting unnecessary stress on one section of the shell. You're stressing the shell, you're stressing the rim. You can actually distort the shell and oval the rim, and this would make tuning almost impossible. And then you're looking at getting new rims, new hardware. So you want to definitely tune evenly. You'll tune this one, you'll turn all the way around the drum. That's when it's going to sound most beautiful, when you do it evenly around. And as you're tuning a drum, you can use the same technique we used before. Look at how much lug, how much threads are left. If it's even around the drum, that means the rim is pulled down evenly going around the drum. That's the easiest way to tell if you've evenly tuned your drum. And of course, your ears is the other thing. You want to have that just right sound. I hope you enjoyed and learned a lot from our presentation today. We covered everything. What I want to stress is that you can take an older LP drum, 15, 20 years old even. You can take the time, mount your own head, or put a new pre-mounted head on it, and that drum will sound terrific. Of course, you always want to care for your drums, and LP drums are built to last. They're built to take that abuse, but just think how much longer they'll last if you'll keep them in cases, keep using that lug lube on them, and take good care of them.